You probably know Stephen King as the guy who played Geordie Verrill in the 1982 movie Creepshow. But did you know he's also a writer? Well, he is, and a pretty good one at that. Today we'll be discussing his 1996 serial novel The Green Mile, about a group of death row inmates and the guards who watch over them. There are no vampires or killer clowns this time, but there is a friendly little mouse that does cute little tricks. Ultimately, it's a story about death row and why some people get miracles while others get misery. So let's head down the Green Mile.
Like to drink, only not spelled the same.
I will say I don't like Stephen King. Like, not him as a person, his novels. Like, it's not that I dislike him, it's just I've read The Shining, I've read Carrie, I've read The Stand, I've read Pet Sematary, I've read The Green Mile twice now. And for the most part, when I read his books, I'm just kind of like, yeah. It's like well written, but it just something doesn't click with me. I don't know what it is. Sometimes I know what it is, but for the most part, I read this book quite a while ago, like in high school, and I really, really liked it. But other than that, all of his other ones just kind of fell flat with me. So that's my preface for this book, because this book is the exception. I really like this book. I think it has some flaws, but overall, as far as Stephen King books go, this is like top tier for me.
Yeah.
It's like I don't expect I would read. There might be a few others of his that are similar to this where I would also really like them. I'm not sure I want to dig through 80 novels to find them, because of I'm happy to read more stuff by him, because he is, even in those other books, even though I didn't necessarily like them, I recognize, okay, he's a good writer. He's a great writer.
I've heard a lot of people say he's probably the greatest living American author at this point. I don't know if that's true. I think as far as cultural impact, there's absolutely no question about it. And I also think because of his cultural impact, you feel like if you're going to be aware of the landscape of fiction literature, you have to be somewhat acquainted with Stephen King. So
greatest, at least as far as, biggest impact. Doesn't mean he's like the best writer. It just means like the greatest impact. I mean, he's good too, but quality, like the whole package basically.
Yes.
Yeah, I would, pacing, dialogue, character work, getting everything firing all at once, character, theme, plot working together, the suspense aspect of it. Just, he can write.
He also is really good at American culture.
Yeah.
So you find yourself just immersed in the situation or the scene he's describing because it's so relatable. You're like, oh, this is my childhood. It's evocative of real places and people.
Yeah.
That, well, I'm getting into this, Percy Wetmore. I think it's like everybody has had a Percy Wetmore or two in their life. And I think that's maybe the greatest talent of Stephen King, is he writes characters and you're like, I know that person.
Yeah. So what is The Green Mile?
The Green Mile,
As a book,
it's a prison drama, death row specifically.
Suspense?
I would say...
Not a thriller, not a horror.
Definitely not a thriller, not horror. I mean, the genre is kind of Stephen King.
Yeah.
That's the way I'd put it. It's Stephen King, magical realism. It's interesting because
it's a much more tame Stephen King, I would say.
Yeah.
Where it doesn't have the, there's no werewolves or whatever. There's not a murderous clown.
Yeah, but there's a huge piece of this book is supernatural, which that's kind of his big thing, is even if there's not a monster, there's almost always something supernatural going on.
But it is toned down.
I would say it's a supernatural prison drama.
There you go. Yeah. The main character is Paul Edgecombe. He's a guard in the prison, so it's kind of about the prison guards and the prisoners being on this. It's all pretty much contained for the most part in this cell block, cell block E. There's 5 cell blocks in the prison, I think, and there's so A through D, and then they are cell block E, that's where the prisoners go that are on death row, that are waiting to be electrocuted by the electric chair. It's in 1932, so that's the way they executed prisoners back then. And the Green Mile refers to the floor, which I think is tile, green tile.
It's like lime green.
Lime green tile that the prisoner has to walk on to the electric chair. They walk down the green hallway, they go to the left. Stephen King says it's life, because that's where, I don't know, the utility closet or something, other things are. And if you go to the right, you go through Paul's office and then to the electric chair for your death. The novel is just about a prisoner named John Coffey that comes to the prison, and spoiler free, he has unique things about him that you'll learn about.
The mystery of the book is he innocent or guilty? Mm-hmm. And what does that mean for whether or not he's going to be...
And really just what's up with him.
Yeah.
Basically, because there's things that he does where he'll just like sit there in his cell and like cry. Mm-hmm. Like I think he describes him as just basically always crying or always having like big wet eyes or tears running down his face.
He's scared of the dark.
He's scared of the dark. So there's just things about him you're like, what's up with that guy?
He seems like a child almost.
Yeah.
One thing I think that is worth adding is that the novel was written in a serialized format originally.
That's a big part of it.
I think you can still find the serialized. I think there were six books that came out. They came out a month apart, and he just wanted to try to challenge himself. When you read this, a lot of times it's split up into 6 different books. At the beginning of a new book, it's basically just the end of the last book, which is a little bit annoying if you're kind of reading it straight through.
There's like there's like the end of, plus he teases you for the next month's edition at the end. So like you read it, it feels like a TV show, like a TV series kind of. What's especially interesting, I think, about this is that he didn't write it, like if I was going to do this, I would write it all at once and then just publish it in installments. He did not do that. He read it as it was being published.
Yeah.
So like the first one comes out, he's working on the second or third. I don't know where he was specifically, but I know, the first one comes out, he's still working on it. That's one thing I try not to hold against the novel too much but my biggest complaint about the novel is the lack of, I don't know, cohesion maybe. Like I feel like if he had written it as a novel and went back and then like smoothed it out a couple times, it'd be a lot better.
Yeah.
Because it does feel like, because when you're writing a book, it's like you might have things outlined, you might have things planned out, but as every author knows, it never ends up that way. You might get somewhere close, but things are going to happen you didn't expect. And then, you get through the first pass and then you get a chance to go back through and, okay, I'm going to tweak some things here so that the ending makes more sense, so that it all works together a little better, where he didn't get a chance to do that. So
in some ways it makes the overall impact of it as a novel even more impressive.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, it's like amazing that he was able to even write something that's put together that well, while not getting a chance to ever go back and redo certain things.
Yeah, because I think no spoilers here, but I think the ending of this book is fantastic.
Mm-hmm. The last chapter is might be one of my favorite last chapters I've ever read.
Yeah, it's incredible. So the fact that he's able to stick a landing like that when he's he's described writing books as excavation. Mm-hmm. So the story's already there, and as the writer, you're just trying to get as much of it out undamaged as you can. That's kind of his thought process. That makes this even more impressive to me, that he was able to have a book that from beginning to end is cohesive and goes somewhere that's unexpected and really satisfying as a reader.
So surface level stuff, what did you like about it?
I think the themes are the thing that I like the most in this story. Stephen King there's really not much that's bad about it, honestly. The characters are really good. The dialogue is good. He's really good at slice of life kind of. He'll give you a whole page on something that's super tangential. Doesn't need to be there, but you're like, I'm glad I read that. I wouldn't take that out.
Yeah. Little things too, like just character dynamics, the way two characters talk to each other. It's just insightful. Like, I'm going to naturally think about things in a different way than you do, and then him being able to understand that and then write something where that comes out naturally.
I remember specifically the relationship between Paul and his wife feels it feels like a real marriage that's warm and old.
Yeah.
And they've been married for, I think at the most of when the novel's taking place, all their kids are grown up and out of the house. So I get the sense that he's in his late 40s, early 50s at that time. They're past middle age, so they've been married a long time, have grown kids. You just tell he loves his wife so much.
It's refreshing.
Yeah, it feels realistic. It doesn't feel tropey. It doesn't feel cliche or stereotypical. It feels like a real marriage that's like a really good marriage. And I just think that'd be really hard to write.
Yeah.
So this is definitely an R-rated book. And it's also very gruesome. So even though it's not a horror novel, there's scenes where it describes the execution of prisoners. And some of those are extremely graphic. And even that, I would say you should know that going into it, because if that bothers you, you probably shouldn't read this. It doesn't bother me that much. And it also, I think, actually serves this story really well. So that doesn't bother me. The one spot where Stephen King kind of did the thing where he turns into the 16-year-old boy is, I won't explain it yet, but there's a character who is kind of out of their mind because they have something wrong with them. And so it's kind of not, they're sort of hallucinating and they don't know where they are or who they're talking to. And the way that he makes that work in the story is they are incredibly vulgar, sexually vulgar, and just saying ridiculous stuff. And it's so over the top that it seems unrealistic, and it seems like it's just him kind of getting that little slice of his, he always has to insert that in there, and I'm just like, that's totally unnecessary, and kind of actually took me out of the scene.
Yeah.
Because it didn't fit the scene, and it was just super raunchy and gross. And that was a very, very brief part of this book. But that was the one where I'm just like, I think it seems like he wants to push the envelope just for the sake of pushing the envelope sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, that part, which maybe we'll get into this once we do spoilers, but I think that part serves a purpose for why that character's saying those things, but he has it turned up to like 11 or 12.
Exactly.
I think he could have accomplished the same thing at like a 6.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, because I agree that for the most part, he's restrained, and I think that's when he's at his best. It's when he pushes things a little bit too far, which I think that's one moment for sure. And then there is one part where an execution goes wrong, and it's not overly long. I think it's like 2 or 3 pages, but just the descriptions and the things that are happening in the scene seem very, very over the top. Where I'm like, you could have put that a different way or been more subtle about it, where it just feels like that's where he's pushed it a little too far, where it feels gratuitous is the word I would use, where it just feels like it's trying to be shocking to get your...
It's like exploitative, where just watching, videos of car accidents or something.
Right, yeah.
But I would disagree with that, just simply for the fact that there's so much build up to that scene. And he does this thing where he foreshadows in a way where he just tells you exactly what's going to happen.
I don't like that.
And I think sometimes I do like it.
Yeah.
But
it's because he'll say and then I'll tell you about this other thing, but not quite yet, basically. And you're like, oh, what's going to happen? It makes you really want to keep reading, but it's like, it's like a cliffhanger. It's like, I feel like it's kind of cheap to me. It's like, I should want to keep reading because the story's so good, not because you said, oh, something exciting is going to happen in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, it just pulls me out of the story a little bit.
Yeah, but in this case, it's not exactly that. So I would say this is maybe mild spoiler, not totally. From the very beginning of the novel, Percy Wetmore is horrible. They all hate him. But there's something ominous about him that you don't find out until way later, and he never says exactly what it is. And the scene you're talking about is connected to that. And so I feel like it's earned because they're like, Percy is horrible. He's horrible. He's horrible. And yeah, he paints a character who's very unlikable, but he doesn't seem evil. He doesn't seem, only because Paul is telling you that he is. But you're like, what's going to happen that's so bad?
Yeah.
And then when you get there, I think it's kind of like, well, it better be pretty bad.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, how do you justify everything leading up to it?
Yeah, I just think it's more of like it was an 11 or 12. It could have been same kind of thing. He could have done a 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And accomplished the same thing.
Sure.
But
I just think that stuff, it bothers me.
those are the only 2 parts.
Yeah.
And it's like a total of 8 pages in the whole book,
Yeah.
you know, out of 500, mine's like 500 pages. Yeah. So yeah, just with Stephen King as an author, like I think he's, like I said, at his best when he's restrained. If he has a good editor and he's writing a certain kind of book where he can take all of his worst tendencies and just like suppress them and keep them down, you know, I think that's when he's at his best. And I think, but part of me wonders, it's like, if you don't get some of that really good stuff without him pushing the envelope in other places and other novels, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's hard to take away that stuff. And I would wonder if you take away some of that, if you lose other things that make him great, you know, that make, just that make his work unique. You know, we talked about with Dune in our Dune review and even our Old Man and the Sea review, how the themes in those books are inseparable from the plot and from the characters. And where this one, I like the story, I like the themes. I don't feel like, I think there are times where it does overlap and they work together, but it feels like it's almost, I feel like with this story he could have gone different directions with the theme and vice versa. It doesn't feel quite as inseparable as some of those other novels.
I'm curious what you think the main themes are.
Yeah,
I would disagree with that.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I think the main theme of the novel is super tightly interwoven, even to the title. When you understand, when you get to the point where you understand what the Green Mile means, okay, it's this hallway that they have to walk down to go to their death ultimately, and that's the main theme of the book. The main theme of the book is death, and the impending nature of death, and the horror of the fact that we're all walking towards death. So the whole plot, the subject matter, it's all connected to that theme. And there's other minor themes, I think. But that's the main one.
Yeah, and I think it's set up that way, but I think the things that happen in it, especially when I think of things like Mr. Jingles, the little mouse, you know, there's certain things in there I'm just like, well, how does this connect? You know, what is he trying to do here? And I think it's a product of the serial nature of it, that he wasn't able to go back and kind of make things a little tighter, clean them up, and make them, you know, feel a little bit more inseparable. But to me the theme is, the Green Mile, the walk you take from life to death. And then I think he sums it up at the very last chapter. So last chapter of the book, his wife dies in a bus accident. They're riding on a bus. In case you don't remember, they're riding on a bus. Like a semi hits the bus, basically. And everyone dies on the bus except for Paul. But his wife dies in his arms. And then he's crying out to John Coffey as if he's there and be like, save my wife, because John Coffey has healing powers. He saves Mr. Jingles. He saves Hal Moore's wife. And he's basically like, why did you save those people? Why can't you save my wife? Which is, you know, basically he's calling out to God in that moment. Standing amid the spilled luggage and the ruined dead, I learned a terrible thing. Sometimes there is absolutely no difference at all between salvation and damnation. I would say that's the theme in a sentence. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I think I know what it means, but he's obviously drawing a direct line between people that get saved from whatever in life and people that have bad things happen to them. And he does that through the electric chair. So you have these guys that have done terrible things in their life. They're on death row. They get electrocuted and they die. And John Coffey on death row, when he heals people, when he heals Paul, it's described as like an electric current almost. Like Paul feels like he's being electrocuted, but he's not being killed. He's being healed. And then even at the end, he says when he's holding his wife in his arms, it says she's like shaking, and he's describing it as being electrocuted. But then he also says John electrocuted him, meaning he saved Paul. So he's obviously trying to compare those two things and saying that there's no difference in life between being saved versus dying, because Paul's lived this long life. He's seen terrible things. He's just experienced like one of the worst things anyone can experience in their life. He seems mad at that moment because he's crying out for someone to save his wife. And he's like, God saved, Mr. Jingle's a little mouse, but why can't he save my wife? He saved Hal Moore's wife, why not my wife? Mm-hmm. So it's like the frustration, it's very reminiscent of Job in the Bible, just crying out and being upset and about bad things happening in your life and just dealing with that. And then
it's connected to the novel though. So the theme, it's not, it doesn't feel pasted on to me. I think it's all really well connected. There's two aspects to the theme that seem pretty clear to me. One of them I think is totally correct and true, and the other one is way, way off and way hyper cynical. But they come packaged together. So this is in my version here, this is the recent, Scribner paperback, page 421. At the end of the novel, he's like 104 years old.
Yeah.
So that's something that's kind of like a big reveal. Is like, so John Coffey.
That's why he survived the bus crash.
Yeah.
Because he's not just healed, he's like basically given superpowers almost.
Yes. Another big part of the book is John Coffey, when he heals people, touches them, and he sort of sucks like these like a black cloud of bugs.
I imagine that's no-see-ums, the little gnats.
Or no, he touches them, he heals them, and then he blows out of his mouth, and it's like this black cloud of.
Well, he takes on the ailment almost. Yes. Because it's like when he heals them, he becomes very like, it's almost like he's dying.
Yes.
And then he has to expel whatever it is.
Yeah. So it's this overtly, and they talk about, the book is all about miracles and healing and supernatural power. One really interesting, and maybe I don't know if you'd say it's the climax, but it's towards the climax of the story, is John Coffey looks like he's going to die because he takes on this brain tumor and it's just too much. Like he's so sick. But then when Percy Wetmore comes back onto the scene, he expels this sickness into Percy Wetmore, which basically makes him lose his mind. And then he shoots Bill Wharton as he's sleeping in his cell. So there's a lot going on there. But the overall theme of the book, so he's remembering all of this different stuff that happened. So you find Paul is writing this, he's writing like a memoir as he's in a nursing home later in life. And
I'll say the same thing happens to Mr. Jingles too, because Mr. Jingles is still alive at the end of the novel.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long mice live, but I assume it's not.
Well, because Percy tries to kill Mr. Jingles. He stomps on him.
Yeah. So when John heals him, he becomes superhuman, basically, like Paul does, and to survive and
so he lives like 70
and,
years. I think most mice maybe live like a year, maybe 2.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say like 4.
Which makes you wonder, at the end of the novel, you wonder how long is Paul going to live, because he's still alive at the end of the novel. He's like 104 years old.
He's not going to live he's not immortal.
Right.
He says that. He's like, I know I'm not mortal. I have gotten sick. It's rare. So he just has some resistance to the ails of life, basically.
So at the end of the novel, he's finishing his memoirs, and he's thinking back on everything that's happened. And he's thinking, this is after he reveals what happened with his wife and how heartbreaking it is. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, one of the most gut-wrenching scenes I've ever read in a book is when his wife dies. Mm-hmm. It's so unexpected. I didn't see it coming at all. And the way it's written, it's so tragic and sad. And
it's, what's that word? It's one of my favorite words. Where it's just very matter of fact. And there's like little details there that are just like mundane. Or I love he sees a pair of underwear, because they're on a bus with a bunch of people and like luggage, and he sees a pair of blue underwear and it says Wednesday on the waistband. Just like, so just like there's this whole like image of like someone that packed their clothes and they have their clothes labeled, like their underwear labeled to just like little details like that it just make it just kind of matter of fact, and that makes it worse. It makes it much more tragic. It's not like written to be some huge crazy thing. It's just like prosaic, is that the word? Where it's just very just like,
Until he actually gets his wife in his arms, and then I think there is a little bit of description of and he sees John Coffey under the bridge.
Yeah. But those little details just make it so real.
Oh, yeah. It's like texture. It's like this, so much texture to the scene. You can see him kind of walking down the street in just a haze of what happened, and he sees a shoe over here and a pair of underwear over here, and then he'll just matter-of-factly say, and like, you know, an arm, just an arm is like laying.
Well, it's like, because I think back to like terrible things that happened in my life, or just those core memories, you know, and there's things like that where there's like little random details that you remember for whatever reason, and you know.
But so he, right after that scene on the second to last page, he says, I look back over these pages, leafing through them with my trembling spotted hands, and I wonder if there's some meaning here, as in those books which are supposed to be uplifting and ennobling. I think back to the sermons of my childhood, becoming affirmations in the church of Praise Jesus, the Lord is mighty, and I recall how the preacher used to say that God's eye is on the sparrow, that he sees and marks even the least of his creations. That's another thing about this book, is that there's tons of Christian imagery and Bible references, which I think is actually pretty common in a lot of Stephen King's novels. It says, when I think of Mr. Jingles and the tiny scraps of wood we found in that hole in the beam, I think that is so. Yet, this same God sacrificed John Coffey, who tried only to do good in his blind way. Which John Coffey is obviously a Jesus Christ figure. Even the initials JC are intentional.
He heals people. He's going back to our Old Man and the Sea review. You know, this one, John Coffey, is a very like literal Christ figure. Obviously, not exactly one-to-one, because he's not the Son of God, you know, he's not sinless. But, you know, JC, he heals people. He the crying seems to be because he's like, he sees things, he knows the brokenness of the world, and he's just like bearing the weight on his shoulders.
And he's innocent.
And he's innocent. He's wrongly convicted, executed by the state, you know, just very clearly supposed to be the Christ figure.
He says, yet this same God sacrificed John Coffey, who tried only to do good in his blind way, as savagely as any Old Testament prophet ever sacrificed a defenseless lamb, as Abraham would have sacrificed his own son if actually called upon to do so. I think of John saying that Wharton killed the Dedrick twins while their love... I'm sorry, I gotta get glasses. I think of John saying that Wharton killed the Dedrick twins with their love for each other, and that it happens every day, all over the world. If it happens, God lets it happen. And when we say, I don't understand, God replies, I don't care. That's the part of this that he gets wrong, but it is a question and an observation that every single person struggles with.
Well, right, and the question I have is Stephen King saying that, or is it Paul saying that in a moment? Because Paul's writing the story. It's not Stephen King.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I mean, it is Stephen King, but is it supposed to be Paul saying that in a moment of, you know, weakness and emotion, or is it Stephen King saying that, you know, which it's unclear. I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say because Paul...
It feels like Stephen King saying it, but I'm not positive.
That would be my guess. Paul he's the writer in this story. Stephen King often writes about writers. And not that they're always a stand-in for him, but I think a lot of his thoughts kind of come through that character. So that's kind of the way I read it. But then at the very end of the book, he says, I think of Elaine standing in the door of the sunroom and telling Brad Dolan to leave me alone. Sometimes I doze and see that underpass in the rain with John Coffey standing beneath it in the shadows. It's never just a trick of the eye in these little dreams. It's always him for sure, my big boy, just standing there and watching. I lie here and wait. I think about Janice, how I lost her, how she ran away red through my fingers in the rain, and I wait. We each owe a death. There are no exceptions, I know that. But sometimes, oh God, the Green Mile is so long. It's an unbelievable, I mean, I'm getting chills just reading it again now. It's an unbelievable ending. So on the one hand, there's this question of how can a good God who has the power, although it's never really, John Coffey's power is never really connected to God in the story. Right. But I think if I'm psychoanalyzing Stephen King a little bit, I think the question is, how can a good God allow so much injustice and so much sin and darkness in the world and do nothing about it. Stand by while people like John Coffey get executed. Stand by while innocent little girls get raped and murdered. And we have all these questions and we say, God, I don't understand. And God says, I don't care. And I think that conclusion is wrong. God doesn't say, I don't care. God has spoken definitively, mercifully, compassionately, truthfully, repetitively throughout human history into that question. So that's what I think he gets wrong. But I think the impulse to wonder that, and I think a lot of people land there before they understand the gospel, before they maybe get acquainted with the scriptures, I think it's very easy to think that way. Like, how could a good God let this happen? Especially, how could he let this happen to me or someone I love? What I think he gets right is the horror of death, which I think is the way that it ends is, man, we're all heading towards death. And you think that, man, if I could just extend my life and live healthy, that's what everyone's trying to do. That's why people are obsessed with health and fitness. That's why we've invested so much into sort of like the whole medical field. Like, we're trying to live longer, better, healthier lives. And I think part of the point of this book is that doesn't do anything except kick the can.
He says death comes for us all.
Yeah, exactly.
Not those exact words, but he says he's thinking about, I think it's when Mr. Jingles dies, and he says Mr. Jingles must be thinking of Percy or something about how something about Mr. Jingles hiding from the bad one, and then he says the bad one comes for us all. Percy, I think, is supposed to be that kind of representation of the bus accident. He's the chaotic bad thing that happens that you can't really explain, because it happens to Mr. Jingles, happens to Hal Moore's wife. You know, she gets afflicted with a disease. Why does it happen to her but not someone else?
Yep.
The bus crash, the Percy Wetmore, Dederick twins. Yeah, it's just like, so that's why I think the to me the theme is more about, I think it's less about the God not caring part, which I think that is an aspect to it, but I rate it more on the Green Mile of life. Bad things are going to happen, and you're not going to understand them, and it seems random. Why does God save this person? Why does he let this terrible thing happen to that person? And because he's crying out at the end to Jesus, basically, John Coffey, and he's saying, like, save my wife. Why not? Why? And John Coffey just disappears, and it's like, so he doesn't get any answers. He doesn't get what he wants. Yeah, like, I don't know if he's providing any answers. He's just basically saying life is hard and bad things are going to happen and you're just going to have to deal with it. And the difference between, a bad thing happening to you and you living a long life are not that different, because at the end of the day, the bad one's going to come for us all.
The greatest tragedy in the book is not his wife dying. It's John Coffey being electrocuted. That scene is so sad. It's not as sad as the end scene, because you think you've kind of made it over the hump of, oh, this book is so sad.
And it kicks you while you're down.
Yeah, exactly. But John Coffey dying, because John Coffey he's the good character. He's innocent, and he's so likable and sweet and almost childlike. And, I don't think he's a good parallel for Jesus. Jesus is intelligent and divine and powerful and courageous, and so there's a lot of ways that it's kind of like it's weird the choices he makes.
Well, I said you can only take that so far before you just get to Jesus. So you can't just make him literally Jesus. You have to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's in the context of, like you said, it's a magical realism, so he has to be a real person.
Yeah.
Just with a little bit of Jesus-like things about him. But clearly making there's supposed to be a strong connection there between John Coffey and Jesus. So.
And we don't necessarily get answers of why does this person get cancer and not that person? Why does this person suffer this horrible trauma that's done to them and not that person? We're not going to necessarily know that. But what we do know is God does care.
Well, that's why I wonder, that's why I go back to my question, is Stephen King saying that God doesn't care, though? Because in the novel, he does care. He saves Mr. Jingles. He saves Paul. He saves Hal Moore's wife, and he does that through John Coffey, who is supposed to be a Jesus-like. Even John Coffey lays down his life because he is innocent. You get the sense that Paul could do things to free him at the end, but they're all just kind of like accept what happens to him. And John Coffey's like, he basically gives his life. Like you get the sense that he could fight back and say, yeah, Paul, free me, I'm innocent, and they don't do any of that. They let the state execute him.
Is John Coffey, is there this kind of organic good and evil in the spiritual realm that just exists that we don't understand? And then God kind of sits over all of it and he sees what's going on clearly, but he's sort of like a passive observer. That's, I think, the world of the Green Mile. And I think that's where, when you read the Gospels and you look at the person of Jesus, that is the answer to the question, does God care about our suffering? And it's like a overwhelming, well, of course he does, because he entered into it to save us from it. And that's what I think this book gets so right, is life is painful. So here's a question. Do you think the ending of this book, would you call it cynical? Is it hopeful? Is there any like sort of bright kind of silver lining to it? Or is it just like all dark?
It hits to me, it's the perfect, that's why I love the last chapter so much, because it just brings, it's like all of the above. To me, it just like brings up everything. It's like, I don't even know how to describe the feeling I get when I read a chapter like that. It's sad, it's beautiful, there's like some dread in there, there's like, it's bittersweet, it's a little bit confusing and strange. It just like brings up all the emotions. And I would say, yeah, because it doesn't feel, I can't say it's cynical, or I can't say it's optimistic. It just feels like it's kind of hits a little bit of everything. Because and I just think it's so relatable with that question of like, why do some people get saved and others don't? Why do bad things happen to good people? And that feeling of like helplessness and just not having a choice in the matter and not understanding it, I think is something he gets so right.
Yeah.
Even if, what he concludes about that is wrong, I think that aspect of it is it's just a great representation of that.
Yeah. I think my take on it is that it is hopeless and cynical. I think it leans pretty heavily that way. So then reflecting on it, I was like, why did I love this book so much? And I think it's because it puts you in a place emotionally and mentally.
Well, first, that's a good question, because we just did Annihilation, which you, I think, described as hopeless and cynical also.
Yes.
And that's the reason you didn't like the book.
Yes.
So so sorry to interrupt, but what's the difference then?
Well, I don't know, that's a good question. It's hopeless and cynical, but it's not reflecting on spiritual realities at all. It's only reflecting on naturalistic realities. And it seems like it's kind of like, well, let's just go sort of be absorbed by nature, is the end of it. But at the end of this, it's very supernatural. He's 104 years old. His little mouse buddy lived to be like 70 years old. He's seen all these miracles. And now everybody in his life that he cares about is dead, and he has to just keep going on living. And it's like, would you even want to exist in that state? But what he's reflecting on at the end of the novel is love and loss and relationships. And what she's reflecting on at the end of the novel is basically the abandonment of all that.
I get the sense that Stephen King is also, he's described writing novels as like therapeutic, like therapy on the page. Like, like some people go to psychiatrists, I write books. So it feels like he is really asking these questions too. Yep. He's exploring it himself, and it feels like he's hoping, it feels like he has a hope that there is something more than just terrible things happen, God lets it happen, doesn't care, and then we all die.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like he's hoping there's more, doesn't quite know if there is. So maybe like, doesn't land on optimism, but it does seem like where Jeff Vandermeer in Annihilation, there's nothing of that there. It just seems like, and this is how it ends, and she just goes down that path, where here it's like he's really exploring and seeking to understand the truth.
The way this novel, where it ends, is death is the worst thing. It's horrible. and nobody has an answer to it. And the reason why that's satisfying is because it's true. It's so true. The other thing is like the emotional impact of this is so much. There's so many other things about this book that are better than Annihilation.
I just mean that specific aspect of it.
Yeah. No, I think it's because it made me feel the weight of the sting of death in a way that was unexpected and just powerful. You mentioned like sort of one of his foibles is he just goes too far, but I think one of the things that makes him a great writer is he will just explore anything. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
I think most
Pet
people
Sematary.
Most people are scared to talk about and look death in the face. It's just too hard. It's too scary. It's too like, what's going to happen after I die? What happens to my loved ones after they die?
There's a whole package there. You can't just take out the good, or you can't just take out the bad and leave the good behind. It's
so 75% of this book, it's like a fun, atmospheric, character-driven, really cool book. By the end of it, though, it is really heavy. I mean, it's a heavy, heavy book.
Oh, that's what I mean, where it feels like if he wrote this just as a novel and not serialized, he would go back maybe and make it feel. Because like I said, there's like a big chunk that I was just totally bored with, which is where they go with John Coffey to heal Hal Moore's wife. Like, I like the healing scene, but like the breaking him out of prison to get there, and it's like he's trying to build up tension. Oh, are they going to get caught? Are they gonna? Is this whole thing gonna be busted and lives are gonna be ruined? I'm like, I know that's not gonna happen. There's just like it's devoid of tension. It goes on, and I'm just like reading, like, okay, like. So there's parts like that where I'm just like not interested, and that's where I was kind of getting at before, where I'm like, it doesn't feel as cohesive as I like, especially stuff. There's stuff with Mr. Jingles about him, like. Kind of like John Coffey, like Mr. Jingles has a supernatural kind of thing to him too, or something, like he's smarter than most mice. He can do it. So there's just like things like that. I'm like, what's up with that? What is up with that? We don't really get any answers. What's it there for? There's just stuff like that where I'm like, it doesn't feel like it's tied in.
Yeah. I think that Mr. Jingles, that whole storyline, it seems like he's trying to, this story, it has a little bit of whimsy in it, which I like quite a bit. And I think most of that comes from Mr. Jingles.
A little bit of Tom Bombadil in it.
Yes. A little bit of whimsy. You got to say the H first.
Yeah.
Whimsy.
How many stars do you give it?
I've gone back and forth on this quite a bit.
I made sure to ask you first.
Yeah.
Here's how, hold you to it. If you give it a star rating, it's going to be
here's how I'm going to justify this. I think I've read
locked in.
I think I've read 17 or 18 books this year. This is probably my second or third favorite. So just the experience of reading it, how much I thought about it afterwards, I think it's 5 stars for me.
Wow.
I love this book. I really, really like it. But part of me wants to say like 4.75 because of some of the,
you gotta commit to 4 or 5.
because of it's a little clunky with it being a compilation of serialized novels, but I try to not hold that against it too much. It's more the just egregious content stuff where I'm like, man, I'd love it if my 14-year-old could read this book.
So minor though.
But he can't.
So like just little bits of that.
So I think it's well, and also, if it's 5 stars, part of me is like, I should be able to recommend this to anyone. But I think I just don't think that's true.
Yeah.
Because I would not recommend this to everyone. I would recommend this to certain people with heavy caveat warning. Hey, this is like, there's some content issues here. But I think there is enough that is really special and powerful from a literary perspective that it's totally worth some of the mud you have to trudge through with this one.
Yeah.
I would say my guess is that's probably not true of most Stephen King. I haven't read much Stephen King, but it's probably not true of most of it. But no, this one is great, and I think for me it's 5 stars.
Yeah, I think I'm in the exact same place you are. Not for the exact reasons. There's a lot of overlap there, but that last chapter and the things that made me feel and the things that made me think about, and combined with like the surface level quality of it, Yeah, I think I gotta go 5 stars too.
Do you feel like, so the first time you read this, you were in high school. Now you've been married. How long have you been married?
Put me on the spot with that. 15 years this
15
fall.
years?
Yep.
So do you think this was better as a middle-aged married guy?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I read it in high school and I gave it 5 stars. I don't know why. Just because it was, I don't know, entertaining, I guess. You know, I don't think I probably thought that deeply about it, but I remember reading it and being like, I remember it being one of the first grown-up novels that I read. Like that. Jurassic Park was one. There's a couple others in there where it just feels like, okay, I've graduated from Goosebumps, you know, to like something more literary, something more grown up.
Yeah.
And that was like exciting, you know. So I think the reasons I gave it 5 stars back then are different than now, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, like I said, it's Stephen King at his best, and that's what I need for a 5-star Stephen King book, because like I said, I don't traditionally like Stephen King. I would be super interested in reading more of his books that are like this. Not sure how interested I am in some of the other ones, but yeah, 5.0 stars. All right, that's The Green Mile.
Sweet.
You want to put it with the others? You want to do the honors?
Yeah. Insert funny thing at the end.